Hello, welcome to Nashville Savvy. I'm your host, Megan Pitseedlik from the Pamphleteer. I hope that you're getting a good start to your week. I know we keep moving things around. Today we're starting to start this episode on Mondays at 1. So hopefully that works out for you guys as much as it hopefully works out for us. We're going to jump right into a weird week last week where the Nashville Council was held later in the week. Now, this was due to the election day, which, Super Tuesday was election day. So they pushed the council meeting off until Thursday. We're also going to cover some of the Nest meeting that happened over the weekend. So before we get into that type of stuff and all the zoning legislation, we're going to pull up a video that actually occurred during the comment period of the meeting on Thursday. And it really doesn't need any introduction because there's context to the video. But I just want you to watch something that happened during our public comment meeting period on Thursday.
Good evening. My name is Danny Yates. I'm a retired firefighter and current president of Nashville Firefighters Local 140. I live in Aaron Evans District 12 at 2227 Point Circle in Hermitage. I rise in support of a yes vote for Captain Tracy Turner's resolution on tonight's agenda. It's number 49. In 2022, a Nashville firefighter posted his opinion about license plate readers on social media and called the majority of Metro Council members white supremacists. The NFD disciplined him for violating their social media policy, and he responded by filing a lawsuit contending a violation of his First Amendment right to free speech. Also in 2022, 11 council members, of which 10 are still elected officials, signed a letter of support asking Chief Swan to consider the firefighters' comments as just his opinion and nothing else. The council members also stated the firefighters' posts and comments were benign and similar to others they frequently received. Council members also requested that Chief Swan affirm the firefighters' right to share his opinions whether we agree with them or disagree with them. Captain Turner expressed his opinions on social media concerning people who set fire to our historic courthouse and who looted businesses and destroyed property on Lower Broad. He called a few people some names, just like the firefighter did. Even though Captain Turner was expressing his opinion, he did not receive a letter of support. Instead, an administrative member of the NFD, several council members, and at least one state representative publicly shamed him and called for his termination from the NFD. After Captain Turner was demoted to a firefighter for 6 months and physically removed from his assigned fire station, he was restricted from working at a permanent fire station for 2 years. He filed a lawsuit.
Mr. Yates, your time is up, sir.
It's a shame, in my opinion, that two different cases, which were pretty much identical in the process, are treated differently. Both of them were addressed as First Amendment rights. One was treated one way and one was treated the other. What kind of message do we send there? Thank you.
Okay, we're going to stop it there. So this is a classic case of we're going to watch and see how the council actually reacted and how they made their decision about this resolution to basically give money to this gentleman who was put out of work as a firefighter due to some of his private comments that were made online. We see this trope happening on the local level, on the state level. We just saw these discussions regarding, state flags. We also now see these discussions regarding, your allegiance has to be known, your social media has to be known, your perspective has to be known before you're put on a board. We saw this happen during the appointments commission when Sandra Sepulveda was putting out some stipulations as to, okay, we want to start looking at people's Twitter and social media and see what they're saying. So we're going to watch how the council reacts to this, but just keep in mind that in the past, the council has supported somebody else that this happened to that called the council white supremacists and then gave them money. And now we're going to see how in this situation where the roles were reversed, how it ended up a little bit differently. And this is very telling of modern politics because it does just come down to a tit for tat depending on what municipality is in charge here. So we're going to watch the repercussions. We're going to watch the rest of this video and see how it panned out on Thursday.
After a Nashville fire captain was demoted for Facebook posts made after George Floyd's death. He was set to receive a six-figure sum from the city to settle a lawsuit.
But last night, Metro Council overwhelmingly shut that down, so now the court case is back on. Tracy Turner was demoted for 6 months after he made Facebook posts that the city described as racially inflammatory. The firefighter, who is white, sued for $2 million, then reached a settlement with the city for about $100,000.
But in a 31-0 vote, Metro Council voted against accepting it. They say he cannot be trusted to protect and serve Black people in Nashville.
How can his fellow Black firefighters trust that he will have their backs when charging into a blazing building, when he refers to Black citizens and those who call for reform as animals and thugs? How can our Black citizens trust that he would faithfully fulfill his duties to provide services and care when he views them as animals?
Metro Law Director Wally Dietz says in all likelihood, Turner is going to end up getting some kind of settlement because a judge has already ruled against the city. The question is how much. Dietz says he's worried the city will be forced to pay 3 or 4 times the settlement amount now that that court case is back on.
All right, so this is something that we're going to keep seeing. We see private entities taking things to court, taking the state's decisions to court. We also see private entities taking things that happen in the local metro to court. And we see these bills piling up for the taxpayers. We're going to continue to see this. This is going to be, I guess this is a new thing in the new era of new modern politics, is that we're going to stand on certain principles. We're going to battle it out in the courts, and it's going to be on the taxpayers' dime. So you heard it in the end that Mr. Wally Dietz over there, the director of the Metro Law, is concerned that now it's actually going to cost more than what they were originally going to settle on. So that's going to be because of council members just not passing this resolution to make a statement. And partisan politics being played out in our local, statewide, national politics is always going to hit the regular, everyday taxpayer. That's just how this stuff works. They're going to use your money to battle these political battles out, whether it be locally or farther out as far as the politics go. So that was just something that was interesting that I thought happened and very telling. But let's get into the next stuff. So before we go into the meeting, the new public meeting that happened on Saturday, I want to give you a few updates. So Evan Siegel, who spearheaded this legislation, who is an unabashed progressive, she brought these bills forward, most of them, because she was trying to push this dormant Nashville Next plan, which was passed in 2016. This is something that she clarified during the meeting on Saturday, that all these ideas were already passed in the Nashville Next plan. They just didn't implement any of them because of all the things that have happened since 2016 that kind of got in the way of streamlining some of these zoning codes and updating things and cutting the red tape on some of this stuff. Now, some of this stuff would have been really useful back in 2016, probably more so than now, because we've been doing a lot of growth without a good plan. And now we're kind of stuck in this pickle. And now we're having pushback of local residents who have invested in the growth of Nashville, who have bought their own property, who are landlords and have tenants. And now, because of the growth that has been encumbered by certain zoning laws and codes, it's turned into this mess that they're trying to clean up now. And on Thursday during the council meeting, a resolution was passed by the council that would have a bunch of departments conduct studies over the next year and a half, basically looking at this density-inducing legislation, if there needs to be any changes, what unintended consequences are, how this would maybe get in the way of how the departments already work, or maybe some things that they overlooked that would be helpful to add to the legislation. So in a way, this legislation, though it was introduced at the beginning of this year. It's now kind of in limbo, waiting for more input, which is going to be, I don't know, somewhere around 2025 that we start looking at this stuff, really looking at this stuff again. In the meantime, Evan Siegel is still holding community meetings. So another thing that was brought up is that during the council meeting, a resolution was passed to get these project lookbooks for developers so that they can start looking at kind of what it is that Nashville would prefer these developers to build, and different designs that don't only just, influence them creatively, but also kind of pushes them in the direction of how new Nashville is going to look and what they could do as far as developing. So that was passed, but the remainder of the legislation is now, deferred. We're going to hear more about it in the beginning of next month, but likely they will be deferring a lot of those indefinitely so that these studies can be carried out. So during the meeting on Saturday, it was a lot different than the previous weekend's meeting where almost 100 people were turned down because they were at capacity. They moved the public meeting from the library in Edmondson Library to Belmont University campus. And then that wasn't even big enough. So they had to kind of push over about 100 people out into the hallway. And they did a live stream of that meeting. And it was very contentious. Everybody kind of showed up. Everybody who are property owners who are looked at as the NIMBYs showed up to basically voice their distaste for this legislation being so quickly introduced without a lot of, what they feel was not a lot of public outreach. It just kind of came out of nowhere. Of course, during this weekend's meeting, there was an expectation that this might happen again, but given the fact that a bunch of these bills have been pushed off, and given the fact that, some of the temperature has gone down because it'll take a little bit longer to go through this legislation. There wasn't that many people. When I got there, there was about 9 people there. I think it was News 4 was there. And when it turned out that there weren't that many people, they kind of snapped a picture and left. I stayed to listen to what the discussion and explanations were so I could get a better feel of where things are going with this legislation. And towards the end of the meeting, there was probably about 15 people there. Council member Suara ended up showing up towards the end of the meeting as well. And this was in the Bordeaux area. It was at the Bordeaux Library. And so when we got there, we had a lot of different input from residents. I want to talk about stormwater really quickly because something was brought up about stormwater. So a bill that Councilmember Horton brought forward for this NEST initiative, which would restrict the size regulations of lots in, residential areas, which just would make them eliminate those restrictions and allow you to build on smaller lots. It was pushed off because there is a stormwater study that's being conducted currently. There's 3 phases to this, apparently. They're finishing up the last phase of this study, and we will hear about it anywhere from 5 to 10 months from now, which will be really interesting because during the conversations, there was a gentleman who is a small developer who showed up to this meeting, and he was explaining how the new codes help with stormwater. Interestingly, though, the actual rainfall hasn't increased, but density has increased, and we are having stormwater issues everywhere. So the new development must have some type of impact on the stormwater. It's just, what does that impact look like? Where is the impact coming from? During the discussion on Saturday, Evan Siegel was talking about how it's actually these older lots that are causing some of this stormwater issue, which I thought was interesting because as we've seen density increase, we've also seen stormwater issues increase. So if there are new codes that help with stormwater, why is there this stormwater issue? We're going to find out, hopefully, due to these studies that'll be done sometime this year. And I'm really interested in looking at those because we're also building on the East Bank, and who knows what that's going to do. I know that the Army Corps of Engineers are already looking into the stormwater for that development. So we just keep adding and adding and adding, and the density that would be perpetuated by this type of legislation would also technically potentially add to this, depending on what this stormwater study looks like. So like I said, it seems as though Nashville is kind of playing catch up with these initiatives to help the growth that should be happening. We have people coming here. We don't have enough affordable places, but yet again, we don't have people filling up the rentable places. It's weird how many empty apartment buildings there are because the rent is too high. So while some of the things that Nest think that Nest is like this magic bullet that's going to help this development, some are also afraid of the unintended consequences. There was a couple gentlemen there who were younger and they're renters, and they want to kind of get to the point where they can afford to live here, buy their own house, buy a starter home. And one of them had said, I hear the perspective of not wanting neighborhoods to look worse and wanting to keep things looking nice. But to me, the larger issue is that we have a lack of affordable housing. And I think a lot of that lack is due to what Quinn has outlined here, which is due to our restrictions on how people can build and where they can build it, which is an interesting notion, because years ago when this Nashville Next plan was initially passed, that was one of the goals, was to look at some of that, the restrictions on development. And you can look at other cities and how they've done it, and how it's worked a little bit better was when they had less restriction on the building codes as we went forward. Of course, that's not what happened, and we grew over all of these years, and now we're stuck in this predicament. But homeowners and NIMBYs also agree with this problem. It just seems like the disagreement is about the solution here. Here's another woman who's a homeowner here. She says, I don't understand what's happening to those rental places. They're dropping in price because they can't get people to live there. And in my generation, our kids are coming back home and living with us. So these people who care about the communities that they invested in and own property in are also concerned that, like, but why, if we're building all this new developments with all these apartments and stuff, like, why is it still too expensive? Why are our kids coming home and living with us? So there's a mismatch here with the demand, but then the overbearing development restrictions, which also lead to this weird pricing problem that we have, where the middle income pricing is not doing what it needs to be doing so that people could actually like afford to live and work here. So this is an issue that seemingly was pushed through with and oversimplified with some of these zoning initiatives that now are kind of being teased out. Hopefully will be teased out more with these studies, but being teased out by these questions that people are bringing up during these committee meetings. Well, we also keep seeing pushback on these like NIMBYs. And I want to point that out because the individual homeowners and landlords do feel left behind. And newcomers do think that Nest will help for them to invest in the city, but at what expense? Where everybody who already invested into the city has to just like put their hands up, sell to a bigger developer, make their money, but they built a home, they built a community, they care about their communities. And do they have a voice in this? Or is this just, okay, the new transient Nashvillians get to come in and redraw the map? Well, this also, the attack on NIMBYism is a thing that we keep seeing online, and it's shocking sometimes how negative it is. Like, these people who are trying to protect their homes against developers are getting ostracized because they're just trying to protect something that they helped build. And Council Member Porterfield tweeted out a presser done by the Washington State's Governor Inslee, who called NIMBYism a virus during a discussion that he had about these types of issues that they're having in that state. And she later clarified that it wasn't her intent to be supporting that NIMBYism is a virus. It was more specifically addressing the end where he was saying that we need to address community concerns and I believe that have valid concerns regarding Nest, and we need to work together to find a solution. The problem is that she used a video that supported the notion that NIMBYism is a virus, which is really degrading to all of these people who have been here, invested in this city, and are just trying to help tease out the issues, the unforeseen issues with some of these changes in the zoning code that affects the entirety of Nashville. So then We also had some other people who were from the Bordeaux area talk about their ideas as far as what this could lead to in their neighborhood. Here's one Bordeaux resident. It's a culture thing in this city. What has to happen is that we can't continue to think that Bordeaux North Nashville area is the dumping ground for everything low, poor, and unhoused. Okay, so if we're talking about doing all this development, there is a concern that developers will come and develop certain areas in certain ways that these residents don't want it to be developed. If you're just gonna push everybody out, and then what, the certain areas are going to be nicer and certain areas are going to just turn into like where everybody who can't afford to live downtown go. It's like playing Monopoly here, guys. So there's a little bit of an potential for unintended consequences for places like Bordeaux. And another woman said it's been a clash of almost two different ideologies. Yes, I understand that you're a business person who wants to make your money, but don't disrespect those who have been here in the community for generations. So we're seeing this tug of war, and I'm not paid. It's out of my pay grade to give any insight as to how this ends up. But right now, you see those who back nest, who are really trying to help those who are weary of what Nest will do to just, go along to get along. Understand that this is better for everybody because there will be more affordable housing. And really, this is our only option here. And, and then they're just sitting there trying to protect their investments as individuals, not as a corporation, not as a developer, just my house in my community that we have protected through the years and invested in. We're just trying to protect that. So there's just going to be this like old school struggle. Unfortunately, the only thing that I can foresee here is that a lot of this is, it's really unpreventable. Like the transience seems unpreventable. This push for transportation and public transportation seems a little bit more unpreventable. It's just unfortunate that it's come to the head of, wrestling with and pushing out these people who have really invested in what Nashville is and all the things that we love, the character that we love about Nashville, versus everybody who just wants to come in and as newcomers into the city that they now like because it's this up and coming city. And so it's just this classic, it's like an old school classic, turn of the development. I do feel for everybody involved. I totally get everybody's sides, but as far as the messaging goes, painting NIMBYism as a virus, I feel like went a little bit far. I am glad that Councilmember Porterfield did go out of her way to try to clarify, but she did specifically share that tweet that called NIMBYism a virus, and that definitely ostracizes all these people who have invested in Nashville. So with that, we're going to switch over to Local Corner. Local Corner. All right, I'm going to play I'm giving away all my local secrets. So I'm going to play a little bit of a clip that is from a place called Urban Cowboy. If you don't know it, it's over in East Nashville. I don't know if we could pull that up. So, man, what I love about Urban Cowboy, well, for one, it has a little bit of something for everyone, but specifically, I love their jazz nights. That wasn't jazz, obviously. That was a regular old school country band, but they have jazz nights on Thursdays. They have jazz nights on the weekends, and they play both inside and outside during the summer. It's a beautiful venue. They even have a swing. I love the swing there, guys. And they have all sorts of outdoor fire pits, and it's just like this really cute little hideaway. I like to take meetings with people there. I like to interview people on the porch. It's kind of secluded and private. There's also a wine bar. This is one of my favorite places to go, but now I'm giving it away. Now everybody can know about it, but it's just like a little slice of this rustic, it's literally like urban. It's an urban cowboy. It's this feel that you could kind of escape on a Thursday night, listen to some jazz, and it's over there in the, on that corner, on Lockland. And so I love Urban Cowboy. I think that you guys should check it out if you haven't already. Just keep in mind that you can't tell everybody about it because we need it. The lines can't get any longer for drinks, guys. Like, or I'm going to have to start just going there like at 4. It actually doesn't open till 4:30. But yeah, definitely think about, if you're thinking about things to enjoy as we get into the warmer weather, think about going, sitting outside, enjoying a cocktail or a pizza at Urban Cowboy this summer. So last, we're going to go into Metro Mayhem. Metro Mayhem. All right, I'm changing up the end of our programming a little bit because I do feel like we always end on such a sour note. So we're going to start with the Metro Mayhem, which is really not that much of a mayhem. But, last week it was National Women's Day, and in America that's bent on redefining gender and motherhood and all these other conventional norms, Women's Day is kind of like celebrated as a token talking point for politicians or people trying to peddle some type of, policy or initiative now. And we did see this a little bit from Freddie O'Connell on Friday. And hopefully we'll be able to hear it. You know how he speaks really low. You might have to turn it up. But here's what he had to say about some new hiring practices that we're going to see at MNPD. And he talked about it because, he was celebrating Women's Day. So here's the clip.
We're also excited, you all might have seen Metro Nashville Police Department reinforced Chief Drake being one of the first major city police chiefs, supporting the 30 by 30 initiative, targeting 30% of our police force being women by 2030. Having welcomed several new graduating classes out of the training academy, it's been exciting to see his commitment to that. We continue to follow the guidance of the Inclusivics reports to ensure that Metro is represented in the entire city.
Okay, so, I have no problem with a police officer being a woman. My father was a police officer growing up, and there's some tough mamma jamma. Like, there are some women I would definitely trust to take care of a situation. So it has nothing to do with, women being police officers or anything. It just is another one of these initiatives, a 30 by 30 initiative of, hiring at least 30% women in MNPD, which is just so interesting because we're instead of picking the best candidates, we're just now picking demographics. And you have to start to wonder why. Why don't we just want people who are good in, the best of their jobs to get those jobs? And especially for something like, the increase population and crime that we see in Nashville, wouldn't you want to be surrounded by the best? Like, if you were working as a police officer, would this make you feel comfortable if there's now an initiative that actually puts somebody who might not be as qualified ahead of somebody else? But that's just a hot take. It's not really a hot take. It's just weird. The world is so weird. These initiatives are based on, your gender and your skin color and all of this stuff is very strange to somebody like me, because it just seems like it undermines the people, those who actually who could take advantage of these initiatives. They had like this imposter syndrome of like, do I actually deserve to be here? Or did I just cut somebody out and I'm actually not good enough to be here? And then it's just bad all across the board. But sometimes during these media roundtables, there are lighter, more enjoyable discussion points. And we did see the Airport Authority CEO, Doug Crulin, who is there speaking and answering questions specifically about the airport. We have spring break coming up. Everybody's going to be flying in and out of here, and safety is a priority. And during one of the questions that was asked about all of this, these drugs that were confiscated at the airport, I just wanted to pull up a little bit more of a lighthearted clip as the Mr. Crulin was explaining, how they handle these drug busts at the airport. So
occasionally we have tips that tell us that those drugs might be moving forward, and so we have dogs that are trained for explosives and we have dogs that are trained for narcotics. So I think the airport overall is very safe. Can't say that we catch everything that's moving through, but if you vacuum seal 60 pounds of marijuana and put it in your suitcase, that you don't stand a very good chance, I think, of slipping through security. Just saying. I've not tried it myself. I don't think you have a very good odds. It's not endorsed, but.
So it was a little bit of a delayed response from the media, him saying that it's not endorsed that you try this out. If you're going to bring 30 pounds of marijuana vacuum sealed, we're going to catch you. It was just a funny, lighthearted moment. And, you know, what sometimes seems to be all of these bad things that keep occurring, like fentanyl and other drugs that are being smuggled into the city. And so, yeah, so he did reassure everyone that they have a really good plan as far as how they're going to handle the traffic that's coming in and out of for spring break, and as we go into the travel season here. And also, he wanted to make sure that people felt safe and secure about the fact that they do have all of the tools that they need to take care of looking out for the safety of those who are flying in and out of BNA. Now, another interesting thing that was brought up is that the airport is trying to bring in some new international flights, including to Italy and to Ireland. There were a couple others mentioned. Those are the two that I remember. So keep look out for that they might be adding some international flights that go to those places, which can be very exciting if you're somebody who likes to travel. And that's something that we might see in the future. That was part of the discussion with the airport authority director. So the last thing that before we close things down, looking down the pipes of this week, just so you know, last week there were basically two different versions of the ESA bill. That's like the school voucher, the governor's school voucher bill, that have been now kind of refined in the Senate and the House. So the House has amendments that do certain things to the bill, and then the Senate has amendments that do certain things to the bill. So now in each of these, the House and the Senate legislative, areas, they're kind of pushing forward different bills at this point. So I don't know where this will end up going. It'll take negotiation. We're going to have to figure out what this looks like. But that's kind of what's happening with the ESA bill. So we're going to be covering that this week and taking a deeper look into that. Also, something that was interesting that happened last week that will be covered in the pamphleteer. If you want to check it out, pamphleteer.co. It's a free subscription. Will be the AG's office released an opinion regarding one of the state sovereignty bills, there was two different state sovereignty bills that would basically put these things in place to potentially protect against federal overreach. And the AG released a opinion about one of them that basically said that it was unstable, that it had unstable constitutional grounds or some such wording. And so we'll be going over that this week to take a deeper look into why the one bill seemingly is potentially not going to be able to be backed by the Constitution, and why the other one potentially can. Not really sure, but we're going to be asking the AG's office. So keep a look on for that this week. Lastly, we're going to do something new. So we're going to we're starting a scavenger hunt at the end of this podcast, because I think it's fun. And I think that the local flavor of different places in Nashville is something that gives it so much more character. And I'm always seeing funny things in different areas, and different restaurants and different bars and different venues, that I'm like, oh my gosh, this would be so fun if I made this into a scavenger hunt. So today we're going to include a picture, and in the future, here's the picture. So every week we're going to do this, where I include a picture of something that's somewhere in Nashville, and the first person who could tell me where this is going to win a prize. I'm not really sure what it is. It might be like a drink or an appetizer somewhere. It might be, I'm not really sure exactly what our prize is or what my prize is going to be, but I also am leaving clues. There was a clue in this podcast that kind of gives you a little bit of a hint of where this could possibly be. But so please leave your comment of where you think this piece of broccoli lives, if it's a venue, or if it's a bar, or if it's I don't know, it could be anywhere in Nashville. And the first person who gets it right, we'll message them and we'll figure out a prize. So that's going to be the end of our podcast. It's going to be the weekly scavenger hunt. So if you like it, please make sure to share it with friends, have them watch through for any of the hints that I dropped during the podcast. Besides that, I'm glad you guys made it into the new week with me. I hope that you have a great rest of your week and nothing too crazy happens. But in the meantime, stay informed.